Welcome to Module 4. This module is where our workflow starts to feel truly transformative. Up until now, we have focused on the mechanics, capturing pull request events, pulling file changes, and preparing the data. But here is where the real magic happens. AI steps in to analyze that code, highlight potential issues, and deliver structured data directly into your pull request. No extra steps, no manual overhead, just actionable insights right where your developers need them the most. So what makes this feature so powerful? Let's break it down into three clear benefits. First, AI delivers immediate analysis. Second, it eliminates the need for context switching. Your developers don't have to jump between tools or platforms to see the feedback. The entire feedback is delivered right where they create the pull request. Third, it enforces consistent standards across all reviews. Let's now move on to take a closer look at all those features. So what are we going to build in this model? Step one here is I will add an OpenAI model to our workflow so that it can start reviewing our code. So as part of the process, I'll add a prompt to this node and I'll ask OpenAI to impersonate as a senior developer. So in this process, OpenAI will review all the files that's part of your pull request and it will generate targeted feedback and improvement suggestions. It will also identify potential bugs, security issues, and performance concerns, if any. Once we are done with this step, then the next step is to convert the output from OpenAI to a JSON format. So why are we doing this? There are additional cleanup work that needs to be done when we get the feedback from OpenAI because the OpenAI feedback is in a paragraph and we want to convert that into a human readable format. So that's the reason why this step is necessary. The third step is we want to post these AI feedback back to the pull request, and that will be our step 3. Now that we know what we need to do in this model, let's go back to n8n and let's get started. So before I start building the workflow, I want to show you how to start using the production URL. So step 1 for that is let's just go to the webhook, double click on the webhook and go to production URL and copy the production URL. That's step number 1. And let's go back to Azure DevOps and go to your webhook, click edit, and then go to the step where you have the URL and just paste this URL and then click finish. So you're done half the work. The next half of it is, let's go back here and you see this inner toggle button here. So let's activate the workflow by clicking here. So at this point, this workflow that you're looking at your screen, build a code review assistant workflow, is active. So moving forward, I don't have to come and manually activate this workflow because this workflow is active, and since we are using the production URL, it will automatically get triggered from this point on. Now let's add a first node in this module. So I'm going to click on this plus icon. I'm going to search for OpenAI. Click on OpenAI and from the list of actions, select Messenger model. In here, you see a lot of properties. So the first property is the credential to connect with OpenAI. So for you to perform this along with me, you need to have an account with OpenAI API platform. So for that, go to OpenAI platform. If you don't have an account, create an account and then search for API keys. And in here, OpenAI gives you an option to create a new secret key. And click on this and you can put in any name you want. You can select a default project, and if you hit create secret key, it's going to give you a key which you can copy from here. Go back to your OpenAI, and in here you can say create new credential, and in here you can copy that key. Sorry, you can paste that key. Okay, so this is how you establish a handshake between n8n and OpenAI API platform. As I already established the connection, I'm not going to do it here, but this is how you do it. So once you close it, you come in here, select your name of your name of the credential that you just created, and here the resource needs to be text. And in the operation, because you selected messenger model, that's by default, that's what it's going to show up here. And the next one is you have to choose a model. There are multiple models available, and you can pick anything that you want. But for this, I'm going to select GPT 4.1. The next step is prompt. So this is where you tell OpenAI model that you want it to impersonate as a senior software engineer, or if you wanted to take the role of an architect, you can say so. And then you also provide clear instructions to OpenAI on how you want it to perform this code review. So I'm going to paste a prompt here so that you can see what I put in here. So I asked OpenAI to impersonate as a senior software engineer, and I gave it some instructions on how I want the output to be. I want it to be readable and developer friendly. I also want the output to be a single plain string, no JSON, just like readable in a readable format. And I also gave a format on how I want it. So this is something that you can play with, and you can come up with your own prompt that makes more sense for your use case. And that's all we need to do in this step. So let's go back, save the step. And the next step is I'm going to perform a test so that you can see what the output of this node is. I'm back in my Azure DevOps, and this is the repo I've been using for this entire video series. So I'm going to click on pull request, and I'm going to create a new pull request. And because I'm using the production URL at this point, I don't need to go and manually trigger the workflow. So I can just click create, and I can see my workflow in action. So I'm going to hit create, go back to open n8n, and let's see what happens now. Okay, the workflow is not triggering. Let me take a quick look at why it's not doing it. Okay, let's try it one more time. So I'm going to again go here, create a new pull request, test AI review, and I'm going to hit create. I'm going to go to the executions and see if my workflow is getting triggered. Yeah, so you see it's getting triggered, it's running. There you go, it succeeded. So it took 23 seconds to succeed. So let's just look at it. So I'm going to click on the last node that we just added, the messenger model. And if you look in here, this is the output that you see. So it provided feedback for the 3 files that I had in my pull request. So this is my C# controller. It provided some feedback. And then the next one was the SQL file. So it gave a feedback for the SQL file. And what you see here is this feedback comes in a form of a paragraph, but we wanted the feedback, every feedback to be in a separate line. So that's what we're going to do next. So before we do that, there are some additional steps that we have to perform, and I'll go over it. One key difference that you'll see in this model, in this output is, you see here, you have a lot of properties that shows up here, the content, commit ID, path. But in the output that this node generated, you don't see any of that, right? But for the future workflow, you need some basic information. You need information like the pull request ID, organization name, project name, and the repo ID, because the end goal is for us to post the feedback back to the pull request. So we need those basic information, and that's what we'll do in the next model. So I'm back to my workflow. So in here, let me just put it here. So the next node I'm going to add is the merge node. So the specialty of this node is it can take data from multiple streams and it can merge it together. So the use case that the problem that I'm trying to solve here is this messenger model output does not have the pull request information. But for the future workflow, I need that. So I'm going to add this node. I'm going to select this. And the mode, there are different modes, but in this case, I just want to combine the output of two nodes. So I'm going to select combine. And in the combine by, I am just saying all possible combinations. Okay, once I do that, go back. Let me give a name for this one. So let me change the name to be more meaningful. Merge AI review to PR metadata. Just say and. Okay, let's save this. And okay, let me first delete this one. So as you can see, the merge node has two inputs, input 1 and input 2. So I want the output of this node, the get PR metadata, to be my first input, right? So this way, it gets the pull request metadata from this node and it can put it here. Then I want the output of this messenger model to be the input, second input. So I do that at this point. So at this point, the expected output of this node is it will take the metadata from this node, combine it with the feedback that it got from OpenAI, and that's what your output is going to be. So let's hit save. Let's go back here, perform a quick test. So I'm going to hit new pull request, test AI review with merge node. And let's hit create. Let's go back to our executions and see it in action. So you can see the workflow is triggered at this point. The workflow is running. And once it succeeds, you're going to see a succeeded message with a timestamp. Sorry, it's going to show the duration, not the timestamp. So you click in here. So this workflow took like close to 15 seconds to run. That's what you see here. And if you click on the last node that we just added, you'll see that it took the metadata from the get PR metadata node and it combined it with the OpenAI feedback. Okay, so now we have what we need for the future workflows. And at this point, we are entering the final stretch of our workflow. So at this point, what we will do is we'll add 3 more nodes to this workflow, and that will complete our end workflow. So the next node I'm going to add is loop over items. So as the description reads here, this node will split the data into batches and it will iterate over each batch. So what is the batch in our pull request? So in our pull request, we had 3 files. In a real world scenario, your pull request can have 1 or more files. So let's say your pull request has 10 files, then this will split your pull request into 10 batches and it will iterate the next set of nodes that we add over those 10 batches. And that's what we want. So let's add loop over items. And the batch size by default is 1. That's fine. Let's hit back, hit save. And it adds some additional nodes. I don't need this at this point. So I'm just going to delete these nodes. Okay. And the next step is we got raw data from OpenAI, but we want to do some cleanup before we post it back to Azure DevOps. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to add, before this, let's just do a quick test so that we can make sure this is working. So I'm going to go back to ADO. I'm going to abandon this pull request, and I'm going to create a new pull request. And I'm going to hit create. Let's go back to my executions and watch it in action. Okay, so you saw my workflow got queued. It's running now, and you should see it in action shortly. Okay, so the workflow now succeeded. Let's click on this, and let's click the final output. So there you go. And you see the data here. So one thing you observed is it just looped through only one item, and that's the default behavior. And I'm going to show you how to loop through the other files shortly, but just want you to see the difference. So at this point, let's go back here and let's add the next node, which is going to be a set node. Because at this point, we want to clean up the data, and I already added a set node here, and I'm going to do the same here as well. So let's just go here, search for a node called set, and if you have been following this series, you'll know that in set node, all we'll be doing is adding some fields. So in the mode, we'll be selecting manual mapping, and let's add some fields. Let's add PR ID, and in here, let's add JSON.PRID. Sorry, it should be $. See, this is one advantage of using a test URL over a production URL when you do the workflow. Because when you use the test URL, you'll see that in here and you can drag and drop. But when you use the production URL, you won't see it. But that's fine. It's only a handful, so I can add it. So content string, and this is all coming from the previous node. So it will be $JSON.message.content. So this is the content is the one that the OpenAI gives back to us. So we just want that. And I also want the organization. So I'm going to add the field called organization. And in here, I'm going to say $JSON.organization. The add field, I'm going to say project name, string, and I'm going to put this in $JSON.project name. Add field, repo ID, string, same thing, $JSON.repo ID. Okay, so let's just give this a name, and I would say convert content to JSON, or convert review to JSON. Let's add that. Back, let's hit save, and I'm going to go back to my pull request, abandon this, and create a new pull request. Okay, I put in a title, and I'm going to hit create, and let's go back and go to our executions and start seeing it. Okay, so it started the execution. Okay, so the execution succeeded. It took 18 seconds to run, and if you click on that last execution, you'll be able to see the output. Let's just double click on the last step that we added. Okay, so everything came out as expected except this pull request ID. So let me fix that and then I'll come back and let's go to the next step then. Before I add the next node in this entire workflow, I just want to quickly go over the mistake I did on the previous step. So let me go back to the execution, previous execution. So if you look at the output of the last one, I was getting all my output based on what I passed here. You see here, I had json.message.content and it pulled the content. And for the organization, I had json.organization and it pulled it. But I had the same thing here for pull request ID. I had json.prid, but it looks a little bit different than these, right? You can see these things are highlighted in green, but here it's like that. The reason is, let me go back, go to my editor. In here, there are two, the values, right? So fixed versus expression. You need to make sure you're in the expression tab, not on the fixed tab. That was the mistake I did last time. While all these values were in the expression tab, this one was in the fixed tab. So it was looking for a hard-coded value instead of an expression. So that was the mistake. So I just want to make sure you see that so that if you run into this roadblock, you know how to fix it. Okay, so we are almost there. We are going to add the last node in this entire workflow. And what is the last step for us? We want this feedback to be posted back to Azure DevOps. So the last step for us is to add a HTTP request node. So I'm just going to put HTTP request. And I think you're already familiar with this because we did this exercise back in module 3. I'm going to select this node. And in the method, I'm going to select post because I'm going to post this pull request feedback back to Azure DevOps. And in the URL, I'm going to paste this URL. Okay. So in here, this is the URL that will go and post the feedback back to Azure DevOps, but we had to pass in certain fields in the path. So you had to pass in the organization name, the project name, repo ID, and the pull request ID. If you're wondering like, okay, how do I add all this because I don't see anything in the input, please use the test URL and execute your test so that you'll start seeing the input here and you can just drag and drop. Okay. I promised you that I'll use the production URL at the end, and that's the reason why I'm using it now. But if you're like really concerned that you're not seeing the input, I would say use the test URL for your initial testing, and then whenever you're ready, you can turn on the production URL, right? So basically, it just takes these values from the previous output, and it's going to plug it in, and it's going to make a call to Azure DevOps REST API. And whenever you use the REST API, there needs to be some kind of authentication that's involved. So you need to set that here as well. So we are going to select generic credential type. And in the auth type, we are going to say basic auth. And again, this is just for testing. So we are selecting basic auth. For your production instance, I would say you can go with OAuth or something that's more secure. And in module 3, we saw how to create this basic auth credential. And because I already created it, it's going to show up in my list and just select that. And the next step is, because this is a post request, I'm going to send something in the body. And in the body content type, I'm going to select raw. And in the content type, I'm going to say application/JSON. Okay. And then in the body, remember I said I just want to do some cleanup. So I'm going to paste something in the body that will help me clean up the feedback. And I'm going to explain to you shortly what this one is about. Okay. So what we do here is we have some comments array and we have some objects and some properties. Okay. So inside the comments array, we are building one parent object and we are setting the parent comment ID to 0, which means it's a top level comment and it's not a reply to an existing one. The most important piece in this entire two-line code is the content. Here, we are taking the AI generated feedback, and before sending it, we are cleaning it up. We are replacing the line breaks with /n so that formatting is preserved, and we also escape double quotes so that text doesn't break the JSON structure. Finally, the comment type is set to 1, which simply marks it as a text comment, and the status is set to active so that the comment immediately shows up in the pull request. So that should be it. I think that's the last thing we need to set. Yep. And at this point, let me just change the name and say post review back to PR. And before we go and test this workflow, I just want to do one final thing. So at this point, this last stretch of the workflow is set to run only for one file. If your pull request has more than one file, then you will not be getting the feedback for all the files. If you want to get the feedback for all the files, then all you have to do is just drag this output and pass it as input for this loop over items. So basically this will act like a for loop if you're familiar with programming. So if your pull request has 10 files, this stretch of the workflow will execute 10 times, and it will immediately send the response back to your pull request for each file. It will not wait for all the 10 files to be processed. Once it processes the first file, it will send the feedback, and so you'll be getting the feedback in sequence, but you'll get it rather shortly, and you're going to see it in action. So at this point, I'm going to hit save. I'm back in Azure DevOps now, and we are going to do one final test. So I'm just going to click new pull request. I'm going to say test the entire workflow, and I'm going to hit create. This time, I'm not going to go to n8n. I'm going to stay in this window because I want you to see the magic that really happens in front of your eyes. So I'm in my pull request window. So behind the scenes, this has triggered the n8n workflow, and the n8n workflow is getting executed at this point, and pretty soon you'll start seeing the feedback starting to come into the pull request. There you go. Now you have it. So in the background, the workflow was executed and it immediately sent you the feedback to your pull request. So here you have, it puts the name of the file, getEmployees.sql, provides all the feedback, and then it did the same for the next file, getAverageEmployees.sql, and same here for the C# controller. And that brings us to the end of this series. We started with a simple idea, automating code reviews with n8n and Azure DevOps, and along the way, we built the full workflow, capturing pull request events, pulling file changes, and using AI to deliver meaningful and consistent feedback directly in the pull request. The result? Faster reviews, less manual effort, and a more productive dev team. If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, share how you might use this in your own projects. Thanks for joining me on this journey.